quick message before today's webinar. If you are involved with or know any events that require ticketing or admissions, we have a purpose-built platform just for ticket events. Like RunSignup, it's free to use and provides the same marketing and event day tools to help you put on a seamless event. For more information, visit TicketSignup.io. You can schedule a call there or just start creating your event for free today. Now on to the webinar.
Hi everyone, we're going to get started in just a minute. But as a quick intro, I'm Allison. I work on product here at RunSignup, TicketSignup, and Bob is joining me as backup today. We also have Jen and Johanna on here. So if you have any questions during this, feel free to enter them in the chat and somebody will respond directly to you, or they will ask, interrupt me if needed, or add in anything. We're recording this session and it will be available to you as both a recording and a slide deck for once I actually have a deck of slides for one of these presentations. So we'll go ahead and get started. So we've been doing this AI webinar series, and I think starting next week, we're going to be coming up on a series of vibe coding webinars where we're going to have a few different people from various parts of our company. They're going to demo how they build applications using vibe coding, which is like speaking the way that we do just conversationally, but actually producing code with AI and building different tools and applications. And I thought that one of the things that's really, really fundamental to like understanding how to vibe code and how to build those different types of applications and tools is actually understanding APIs. Because a lot of what AI is built on is still like this transactional system that we keep referring to of like RunSignup. And the way that we get data out of the RunSignup system is through a bunch of different APIs. And so I think really deeply understanding what APIs are and kind of how they work is going to be really helpful for understanding vibe coding. So APIs, there are a lot of people who are really familiar with RunSignup's APIs, and I think that there's two groups in particular that are already very familiar with it. And so one is timers that are using our API to pull data out of the system for scoring races. The other group is nonprofits. A lot of them have invested in these external CRMs. And so they're using our APIs today to pull data out of the RunSignup system and put it into their CRM so they can get a comprehensive view of everything that's happening with their constituents across all these different tools and platforms that they're using. And so these people, these groups, if you're on this webinar and you're one of those and you already get this, I apologize for this very basic explanation, but to me, this is kind of how it made sense as a non-developer myself. So this is a race website, and this is how you sign up. And when you're signing up, you're inputting all these different fields of information. So it's asking me to put in my first name, my last name, email address, date of birth, gender, and like you can tell already, like, oh, I understand why I need the date of birth, right? It's going to tell the timer how old I am and help understand where I am in age-based results. And so we collect all these different fields of data. And based on what type of race you are, you might have additional fields of information you collect, like a giveaway size, like what size t-shirt am I going to get? What additional items do I want to purchase? Did I make a donation? Do I create a fundraising page? And that's all like being entered through this registration path of how I'm signing up. And then the way that you're able as a race director to view all this is reports. And so this is a very popular page in the race dashboard. And what it shows is all of the different information that you've entered, your participants have entered, and it displays that in a bunch of different columns. And we can understand what these data fields mean because we've got a heading on these columns. And when you come into report options, you have a lot of different fields to choose from. So you can choose these basic ones, like what is my address? But then you have a bunch of other fields, like, I don't know, let's say like fundraiser team or whatever. And you can update the report And we start seeing these additional fields of data that get populated in here. And so this is pretty basic for everyone to understand, right? Like your participants are signing up, they're putting data into here, that data is flowing into reports. And then the way that we get this data out of the system is traditionally just like an export, right? We can just download this report with whatever columns or all the columns that we want as a CSV or an Excel file, whatever it is. The other way that timers, nonprofits, and others will pull this data out in like a systematic type of a way is with the API. And so there's a bunch of different stuff in here, but the report that we're looking at is called participants. And so we're just going to focus on that for right now. So there's race participants, and there's an API way that we can get race participants out of the system. And the API is a way that two different systems can talk to each other. So imagine RunSignup talking to a timing system, or RunSignup talking to Salesforce. And what this is it provides this information in a way that different computer programs can understand and digest the data. So rather than me just exporting a CSV and uploading it into a separate platform, I can program something to automatically send this information between two systems. And it's being sent via an API. And one of the things you'll notice here is that this is like a sample response format. This is the language that the API is giving data to another system in. And I think what's interesting here is you can start to understand like which fields are in here and which fields are in the report. So like just take first name and last name and email. When we go into this report, we have first name here, last name here, we have email here. And in the API method, it's asking for like my event ID. And my event ID is the same thing that is here. It's which event I signed up for. And it's a number that represents that, that's unique. And so this API is giving me the data that you can kind of see in this report. And so you understand like participant report, okay, so I'm gonna get the participants and it's gonna give me the different types of data that are available in this report. Another report that's in our system is the donation report, and this shows who donated, and we've got a bunch of different fields here. So we've got like the ID, a unique ID to identify this donation. We have the donor name, how much they donated, if they donated to a specific fundraiser, a fundraiser team, the date that they donated, and we've got all this kind of data that's associated with a single donation, and we've had lots of them happen, and this is a report. And just like all the other reports, we can just export this out of the system. But we also have an option to pull all this out. And so like if a nonprofit wanted to pull all the donations out of their RunSignup race and automatically get them dumped into their Salesforce, they would use this API. And this one's called Get Race Donations. And when we start looking at this one, we can start kind of matching what this response gives you with what's in the columns of this report. So a donation ID is the same as this field here. Like it's a unique ID that's coming from our system. And the user first name, this is the donor name. And so that's the same as the name here. And this is the donation amount. And so we can see over here that the donation amount is this field right here. And so you kind of are able to understand that all these different reports that are in the RunSignup ecosystem, whether it's like your donation report, the add-ons report, a store report, a giveaway report, participant report, like all of these different reports have APIs that let you automatically pull out these different pieces of information into other systems in an automated type of a way. And so just like very, very fundamentally, that's kind of how I like to start thinking about APIs. It's a collection of data, and it's presented in a way to other programs, like software programs, to send data back and forth. And so this is just a screenshot of what we were looking at, where this response of what the APIs are sending to different platforms kind of correlates with what our reports show us. So it's kind of the same exact data, it's just sending it in different ways. We're either able to view it and export it just within the RunSignup platform, or we can integrate and automatically send it to another platform with the API. And so the next thing I wanted to kind of talk about is, actually, I'm going to go into here. Two of the common terms that you hear with APIs is pulling data and pushing data. And I think these are pretty good examples to explain the difference between that. So pulling data examples. So what does it mean when you pull data from the RunSignup API? So you have an external program like Salesforce as a nonprofit, and you are able to pool the different participant, fundraiser, and donor data from TicketSignup into Salesforce by using the APIs. So the Salesforce CRM is calling the APIs and bringing down like all the people who have signed up in the past 15 minutes or 24 hours. And they're pulling all those different sets of data and they're sending them into the structured places in Salesforce that they've programmed the API to do. Another example is a timer who times a race, and they use the API to pull all the participants and all their data, like when they were born, from RunSignup into race day scoring so that they can time and score the race. And then another example is like our check-in apps. So attendees buy tickets on TicketSignup. They go and they add tickets to their cart and they check out. And then the people that are working, the staff, they have a ticket app, and that's pulling in all of those ticket purchases so that they're able to scan and validate who's actually bought a ticket and let them into the event. There's another way that people use APIs. And so like these examples are all like pulling data. So taking that data that's in these different reports and pulling it into a separate system. And the other way that you can use APIs is pushing data. So another system pushing data into RunSignup. So an example of that is a timer will push results from race day scoring back into RunSignup. And that's what shows on your website with the results tab, and you click on it and it's got all that results data. Like that data and those fields were generated from an external system, and the RunSignup system accepts them via an API. Another example is that you're doing check-in on site and somebody hasn't signed their waiver, and so you collect a wet signature in the check-in app. Like we're able to do that with the race day check-in app. And what the race day check-in app does is they push that signature and like when it occurred into RunSignup reports. So I have a verification that, you know, Bob signed his waiver at this time, and I've got that like wet signature in my reporting. Another example is like within the ticket app or within the race day check-in app, you can edit some information based on the permissions you have configured. And so like if you update the name of a ticket holder in the ticket app when you're checking somebody in, then the API pushes that new name and that new data into the ticket signup report. So I can see, okay, this specific ticket has this new ticket holder information in it. And so when you're hearing about APIs, and I think as you start going into this next series of webinars about vibe coding, people will use these terms of pulling and pushing data. And this is kind of what it means, and just like kind of more tangible applied examples, very specific to the RunSignup, GiveSignup, TicketSignup universe. And so when you're looking at the API, there's a ton of different APIs that are built. Like there's not just one single RunSignup API, because that is like way too big, way too complicated. I like to think of the APIs as kind of getting broken up into these little sections that are based on various reports that you have, as well as some different settings that you have in your race dashboard. And when we look at the race participants methods, we have ones that are called get. And so you can get race participant counts, you can get race participants, get removed race participants. All of these let you pull data from the RunSignup universe. And then these that are like add or edit race participants, switch participants, like transfer them from the 10K to the 5K. All of those are different ways that external systems can push data back into RunSignup. So one of the things that I think is really important to stress is there's kind of two different levels to our APIs. And there's public APIs and there's private APIs. Public APIs are just information that's universally available, but we're presenting it in a format that's very easy to build like real-time integrations with everything that's happening in the RunSignup universe. And so one example of that is get races. And the get races method lets you pull all of the 50,000 plus events that are like live right now on the RunSignup TicketSignup platform. And you can automatically pull them into another system. And so one example of this is a running calendar called Running in the USA. It's one of those popular race listing calendars where runners will go to find, a race in their area that they want to run. And Running in the USA uses the Get Races API, which is publicly available. And they have an integration where they're automatically, let's say every like 10, 15 minutes, calling the RunSignup API, and they're saying, are there any new races that have been created since the last time we asked you? And then they're pulling those races, and that's like the key information that's just publicly available, like the race name, when it's happening, the race dates, the race description, where it's located, into the Running in the USA platform, and then listing that on their calendar. And that API is pretty mature, right? Because Running in the USA is never going to pull over a race that's in draft mode, so something that's not publicly available yet, or a race that's specifically been made private, meaning that that race doesn't want their information listed on like search results or publicly on the internet. And so that's like the public API. So really anyone can build things on top of these public APIs, and they're used in a variety of ways. But I think that this like listing calendar, you can go to Running in the USA and you'll see a ton of RunSignup races. They're not manually like copying and pasting races that they find on RunSignup, or like, they're not doing that manually. They're doing it in bulk with an API, and they're programming it so that they can talk to our system, give it special parameters, and pull over new races that have been set up on RunSignup.
Allison, one little nuance, and this is kind of the maturity of our API. It's not just new races. You can look for changes since a certain time. So if a race has changed their date or their pricing or some other piece of information, we pick that up in the API, and the API is smart enough to understand all of that.
Right. So the APIs that we're kind of showing in these examples that were coming off of reports are called private APIs. And so those are obviously not accessible by a big calendar listing site like Running in the USA, because they don't have the right set of permissions in order to get that information. And so that example we were looking at about like get race donations, get race participants, those are data that are only accessible by the race director, like the person who set up the race and whoever they gave access to. Certain sets of that data are accessible by a timer, and then partners as well. And an example of this is like you give timer access to a timer so that they're able to automatically pool participant data to time and score your race. So you have people that are signing up on race day at like 9 a.m., the gun's about to go off, and your timer is able to accept them and pull those registrations into their scoring software, make sure they get the time and that they get ranked in the finishers appropriately, because their scoring software is talking to whatever's happening in RunSignup via API, and it's pulling all those changes. And like Bob kind of gave the example just now of like it recognizing any types of changes. Let's say I transfer from the half marathon to the 10K. That API for the timer recognizes that, oh, okay, I'm actually running in the 10K. I'm not running in the half marathon anymore, and it puts me into that appropriately. So the way that currently we have access to the private API is through something called API keys and secrets. And I'm just going to quickly show you where this is, because this will kind of let you start playing around with vibe coding. And you just go to secure access in your dashboard, and there's a little thing here called API keys. And there's an API v2 key generation here. And what you can do is I have a ton, but you can basically just add a new API key, and the key is here and the secret is here. And these are two fields that you're able to use to authenticate that you're able to have access to this information and data. And it will kind of give you a list of all these keys that you've generated. And this is my most recent one that I have created. And so the way that I'm able to authenticate with these different methods that I have access to what I say I have access to in these private APIs is with these keys and secrets. This is kind of how we control the difference between what's publicly available and then what's privately available. So why are we talking about APIs? Because these APIs have been around for such a long time on RunSignup. Like RunSignup has always had an open API, and we've built all these different applications on top of it, like race day scoring, like the race day check-in app, like the ticket app. And there's all these different like customers that have integrations on top of this API as well. Like there's just thousands of people that have built things in a programmatic way on top of APIs. And in the past, that's only really been accessible to people who know how to program. So they're developers, they're timers who have a basic understanding of programming and are kind of able to build their own integrations with various scoring softwares or whatever. And it kind of put APIs out of the grasp of us who are non-technical and don't know a programming language. But with AI, APIs are starting to matter for just the general public to understand. And the reason that APIs are important for AI is that AIs, if you've played around with it, you've probably run into times where it starts to hallucinate. And it kind of tries to guess things because it doesn't really know. Like there's so many different places it can grab information and data from. It doesn't really know which one to choose, so it just makes something up. It's intelligence, but it hallucinates sometimes. But with APIs, the AI is a lot more like restricted. It's understanding this is a source of truth, and it's able to fetch very specific data from RunSignup. And so I have this list of kind of a few examples of data that AI is going to be able to fetch via RunSignup's APIs, and I've bolded results because that's currently what we have in code review right now. So, we have launched the beta version of the RunSignup AI chatbot. We've got over a dozen customers using it, and it's doing really well. We're learning a lot from it. The one thing that we're working on to get really, really accurate results is actually results, so that when I ask the chatbot, how fast did I run the 8K? Did I run faster in 2025 or in 2023? It's not just making up stuff about what things I ran. It's actually calling the API, and it's looking at these different years and sets of results data. And so it's using AI and intelligence to understand the types of questions I'm asking it, but it's referencing an API to bring out the truth. And so these are just some other examples of how APIs are going to inform what these AI tools are able to understand from the RunSignup system. And so I think that this is really important to get that, like, RunSignup is your transactional source of truth. It's like these sets of data that are just these reports that we're used to seeing. And the APIs are what's allowing the AI to understand what's actually there. It's not trying to interpret what it sees scraping a website, which we've increasingly learned just doesn't work. It's actually referencing real data, real tables of data through an API. And like one of the things that I keep kind of stressing is the RunSignup API is really old. Like it's just been around for many years. It's got thousands of applications built on it, and it's continuing to grow. Like there's just so much available that you can get from the RunSignup API. One of the reasons that's so important is because it's very mature. And so like we are making sure that our API is like telling the AI tools what it can and cannot have access to. So like that little simple example we talked about, like with running in the USA, pooling all the races on the platform, that's really important that it's not pulling in like any of the races that are marked as draft or private, because those things should not be publicly listed. And you think about like all the different things that matter, like, is a result anonymous? Like the AI is going to respect what the API is telling it with a specific flag. So APIs are going to be really important for AI to understand like this truthful transactional data, reduce hallucinatory like responses that it gives, and just ground it in truth. The other example is vibe coding. And so when you are watching demos, and I think like Soren and Jonathan and Daniel on our team, they're going to go through a bunch of different examples of like how they've built things using vibe coding. And one of the ways that they're building these different projects is they are using various parts of the RunSignup API to pull in data or settings from the RunSignup platform and then build these cool applications on top of it. So like one example that I've played around a bit with is like building my own unique fundraising leaderboard using the Get Fundraisers API. And the reason that you're able to build these types of things, vibe coding, and like talking to an AI agent and telling it what you want to create is because you have a strong understanding of like, this is what the API allows me to do. Like this is the data it has. And so you're able to have like a stronger grasp on how to be successful at vibe coding when you start connecting that these APIs are just ways that you get the data out of all these various reports. And that the data in these various reports is the information you're collecting from what's happening on your race. So that was kind of the core, I think, of what I wanted this webinar to be about. But briefly, I wanted to discuss these other couple of terms that we've been throwing around a lot. And I think it's just important to keep reiterating it and keep talking about them because it needs to kind of click with people because these are new sets of technology that are emerging and evolving. So MCPs are something that we're starting to hear a lot more in AI, and that stands for Model Context Protocols. And these are kind of connectors in between APIs that are like that transactional way that we understand data from various systems and AI agents. And AI agents are things like a ChatGPT or the RunSignup AI chatbot. And the MCPs are going to help guide these different AI agents in a language that's familiar to them to the correct transactional APIs instead of the AI just guessing, oh, I'm going to go for Get Fundraisers or I'm going to go for the Get Participants API. Like it kind of starts to hallucinate in that point. So today, what we're able to do with agents is we're able to like kind of box them in. Like, you know, somebody asks a question about results, you're going to use the Get Results API. But as there like is an increasing number of APIs and an increasing number of agents, the MCP is going to serve as like a translator. And so I think that this is a pretty good example for like a use case of how this is going to evolve over time. So if you asked your ChatGPT, which potentially like in the future, you're just doing ChatGPT or whatever agent you prefer, not like searching for things on Google as much, but you're asking it like what half marathons are happening in Philly in March, or like what is just generally going on near me this weekend. And with MCPs, when you're asking these types of questions, even to like a neutral, just like public AI agent, like not just the RunSignup AI chatbot, it's going to kind of go out into the web and it's going to look for these friendly MCPs where it can understand information. And so it's going to be able to use an MCP to understand like, oh, I'll get races and I'm specifically going to look under these parameters of like a specific city, a specific time, and a specific distance. And so the MCP is kind of like this layer in between of helping these AI agents, whether it is ChatGPT or the RunSignup AI chatbot, to understand when and how they should be calling different APIs to get information. So we talked about like public and private APIs, and so public APIs to me makes a lot of sense. Like that example with ChatGPT is kind of analogous to that example with running in the USA listing races. It's just a different technology doing it, and the way that they're getting information from the API is rather than programming something, they're just kind of referring to this new MCP layer. But then there's the private API. And so the way that information gets out of a private API set of data into an AI agent is something called OAuth 2. OAuth 2 is like a mature way of basically saying that you are who you are and you're allowed to access what you're allowed to, and you're able to do the actions that you are allowed to do. And so what it lets you do, and this is kind of available today, we're just continuing to mature it and make it more user-friendly. But OAuth 2 lets you log into a system, and you get a time-limited access token that understands who you are and what you're allowed to do. And this is like going to be more prevalent in vibe coding. Like, I think we're going to start talking about OAuth 2 and vibe coding in these next webinar series probably. Because rather than inputting your API key in secret to say like, oh, I have access to this race, I could just log in using my username and password for RunSignup on an independent application, and that will give me access to the information that I own. So it kind of just walked through that AI example with vibe coding, and I think that's kind of what is available now, and that's what we're going to start showing in the next series of webinars, like how that kind of authentication works for building these new applications that don't require you to be a programmer and have a new way of proving that you have access to the information that you own. The way that we're thinking about AI long-term, and this is just what is happening, is that AI is going to do actions at some point, and it's going to require all these different technologies that we've run through in order to do that. And so I think that the example and where we kind of think the RunSignup AI chatbot and ChatGPT are going to evolve to is the point that rather than signing up and like doing all these actions directly on a website, I'm doing it through an agent, and the agent is doing those things on my behalf. And the way that I prove that I am who I am is going to be OAuth 2. So that if I ask the RunSignup AI chatbot to transfer my bib to Bob, it would ask me to prove that I am, the owner of that registration data by logging in and authenticating my access. And then it would just do that action for me. And that action is able to be done because we have this system of MCPs and APIs that let an AI agent do these transactional types of actions. And I stole this from Bob's webinar, but I think it's a good summary slide just to end things on. So the RunSignup system has a giant database that's made up of thousands of different tables where all this data is stored. And we make some of that available in the RunSignup API in a bunch of different ways. And there's thousands of customers that are using this today. And hopefully what this webinar is leaving you with is a good understanding of what that means and how you can start thinking about the ways that you can use the API with your race data. And then what is emerging is this new layer called the RunSignup MCP server. And there's going to be a bunch of MCPs that make it easy for AI agents, whether that's the RunSignup chatbot or it's, ChatGPT, Claude, to understand where they should go for information that's accurate and transactional in the RunSignup system. And that's it.
That was a really good explanation. I think you kind of covered it from soup to nuts in a very understandable way. I think some of the things that people are kind of questioning and concerned about is, so what's the security of, their data with AI having access to it now?
Do you want to answer that?
Sure. So basically what's happening is that the AI agent, and just to put a plain speak on it, say ChatGPT, to access the list of races it's going through the MCP server and into the RunSignup system. The RunSignup system is fundamentally very, very secure, and everything that's coming through that MCP server is going through those same layers of security. So to Allison's point, the public information is public and ChatGPT can get to it, but what's going to happen in the future is that ChatGPT will understand our MCPs that are available and understand that some of them are private. And so if you're asking for the participant list for the Scott Coffee run from ChatGPT in the future, ChatGPT is going to be saying, I'm sorry, you don't have access to it. Do you want to log in? And then you'll log in to RunSignup. And for that session, it's just like you're using a browser where you log in from your browser into the RunSignup system. And all of that communication, goes through SSL networks and things like that to keep it secure. The same thing is going to be happening from ChatGPT. And once you end that session with ChatGPT, that information is not stored in OpenAI and ChatGPT. It disappears with the session, basically, just like it does on your browser. So it's just like Google doesn't have access to all of the information just because you use Chrome to access the race participants. ChatGPT is not going to do that as well.
Yeah, OAuth 2 is a really mature way, I think, of doing secure logins because it's issuing these tokens that are time limited, and so they expire. Traditional API keys don't expire.
Correct. And OAuth 2, by its very name, it's the second version of it. So, and we started this so long ago that we implemented OAuth 1 first, and now we've implemented OAuth 2 over the years. I think the fundamental thing about security is that that these platforms, especially RunSignup, are very secure systems. We invest a ton of time and money into that. And right now, we're actually building out the security and infrastructure around our MCP servers. You might have seen a recent blog post where I posted that that we're asking for all future API access to come through a specific URL called api.runsignup.com. The whole purpose of that is to set ourselves up such that there's a set of systems and security mechanisms, because the MCP server is going to be kind of running on top of that stuff. And what's going to happen evolutionary wise is that the MCP server is just going to start off with a few capabilities, and it's only going to get exposed through our own chatbot. What's going to happen over time is that our MCP capabilities will be able to put those into a registry such that ChatGPT and Claude and Gemini can all go to that registry and see what's available and then be able to access that information. And
I think all of that is kind of like something that's evolving, and it's going to take time to get there. And I think what's important in this interim period, as there's like all these new things that are coming out, is vibe coding. I think vibe coding is a really applied way to start wrapping your head around what AI can and can't do. And one of my recommendations for starting out with vibe coding and understanding these next few webinar series is think about your event. Like, just think about a report that you would like to see that we don't currently have in the dashboard, or a way that you want to display one of these things. Like the first one I did was like a donor leaderboard or a fundraiser leaderboard and a donor map. They're very simple things. Like one of the ones I did was I made a donor map out of all of my donors. I just put where their zip codes are on a map. And what this lets you start doing is using your brain to kind of connect like what you actually want to create, the problem you want to solve, with the API and the data that's in here, and how you talk to an AI agent to do that. And I think like have those types of things are very simple. It's not going to change the world, but they start forming these building blocks so that as new features start coming out from RunSignup, as well as from all these different AI platforms and companies that are investing a ton in this space, you're kind of keeping up with that pace. So I think that, like, you know, even if you're like a little uncertain, really just think like, I'm going to make a map of where my participants live or where my donors are coming from. And I'm going to understand one of the RunSignup APIs and this data in it, and I'm going to create something with vibe coding.
And I started even simpler. I did the get races, and I said, give me a race list and let me search for races within a radius of a zip code. And because there's plenty of examples of that out there, it's a public API and it uses public information. So yeah, and I think kind of the vision that I'm talking about is 2+ years out of going into ChatGPT and asking for ChatGPT to compare, my previous 5 years of under 30-year-old participation rates in my race. I think the next couple of years is when basically it's the RunSignup platform is becoming accessible to our users, and it's the bar has come down because of AI. And if you're interested in that, if you're interested in kind of learning more about AI, or you're interested in doing something custom with RunSignup, then this is the foundation. And then the next 3 webinars will give you some good solid examples. Soren also makes a note that that we should say good vibes only. So.
All right, thanks everyone.
Thanks.